Elena Carter had always loved maps. When she was a child growing up in a quiet town near the mountains, she would spread paper across her bedroom floor and draw lands that no one had ever seen. Rivers curved like silver lines, mountains rose like teeth, and seas stretched endlessly into unknown horizons. For her, maps were not just lines on paper. They were promises. They whispered that the world was larger than she could imagine, and that somewhere out there were places waiting for her to discover. Years later, Elena was no longer drawing with pencils. She was a respected astrophysicist at the International Stellar Research Station, orbiting high above Earth. Instead of rivers and mountains, she studied stars and galaxies. Instead of a child's imagination, she now had access to the Galactic Union's star archives, records created by dozens of alien civilizations over thousands of years. The Galactic Union's map was a masterpiece of knowledge. Entire arms of the galaxy were charted in bright detail, nebulae glowing like clouds of fire, planetary systems marked with numbers and names, trade routes stretching between worlds like spiderwebs of light. Elena often found herself staring at the enormous holographic projection that filled the research hall. It floated above her head, spinning slowly, a living map of the galaxy. But one evening, when the station's corridors were silent and most researchers had gone to rest, Elena noticed something strange. She was studying the archive copy of the map, comparing it with older versions for her research paper. The older versions were far less detailed, many sectors incomplete, some systems missing entirely. That made sense. Over centuries, exploration had filled in the gaps, but when her eyes followed the lines of expansion, she realized there was a problem. The maps always stopped at the same place, at Earth, on the newest Union map. Earth was a small dot, surrounded by dozens of other star systems. Beyond it, more space was charted, though less frequently visited. But in the ancient map Elena had uncovered, the lines of exploration simply ended at Earth. The star systems around it were absent. The expansion of the galactic chart stopped cold at the solar system, as if someone had drawn a border and said, "No further." Elena leaned closer, frowning. That can't be right, she checked again. The map was authentic, stamped with Union seals, its data unaltered. Every star recorded before Earth was precise. But then nothing. No lines, no markers, no names. Just emptiness. It was as if Earth had once been the edge of the galaxy. Curiosity sparked inside her. She began digging deeper into the archives. The Galactic Union had thousands of data files, histories, surveys, explorations. She searched for references to Earth, the solar system, or anything nearby. What she found only made her more confused. There were mentions of Earth's first contact 2 centuries ago, when the Union finally revealed itself to humanity. There were records of small trade agreements and cultural exchanges. But before that, nothing. No exploration reports, no starship logs, no early surveys of the system. It was as if Earth had been avoided. Elena sat back, puzzled. The galaxy was full of dangerous regions, black holes, radiation belts, unstable stars. But Earth's sector was ordinary. There was nothing unusual about Sul, nothing deadly, and yet the maps acted as though it had once been a forbidden place. The next morning, she brought it up with her colleague, Dr. Samuel Reyes, an older researcher with a calm voice and years of experience. "Sam, have you ever noticed the way the maps stop at Earth?" she asked. He raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "I mean the early maps. The star charts made before we joined the Union, they stop at Earth. No records go further. It's like Earth was the last place they wanted to mark." Samuel's expression grew careful, too careful. He set down his tablet and folded his hands. "Elena, sometimes it's better not to ask about those things." Her curiosity sharpened. "Why? You know something." "I don't know, not really," Samuel admitted. "But I've heard whispers. Old stories, nothing confirmed." "The Union doesn't like humans digging into this." "What kind of stories?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "The kind that can end careers if you ask too loudly." That only made Elena more determined. Over the next week, she searched deeper, requesting access to restricted archives. Most requests were denied. But she had allies, an Andari diplomat named Sarek who respected her curiosity. The Andari were tall, graceful beings with luminous skin and eyes like liquid silver. Unlike others, Sarek did not fear questions. When Elena showed him the maps, he grew quiet. His long fingers traced the empty space where the lines ended. "Yes," he murmured. The silent boundary. Elena's pulse quickened. You've heard of it? Everyone in the Union has heard of it, Sarek said softly. But we do not speak of it. Not to humans. Why? Because Earth is not just another world. It is a reminder, a warning. Elena stared at him. A warning of what? But Sarek only shook his head. That is a story buried in shadows. If you seek it, be prepared. The galaxy remembers things in silence for a reason. That night, Elena could not sleep. She lay in her bunk, staring at the curved ceiling of the station, the stars drifting slowly outside the window. A warning? A silent boundary? What could Earth have done to make entire civilizations stop their maps at its edge? She thought about the humans of the past. For thousands of years, her ancestors had believed they were alone. They had fought wars, built empires, created art, reached for the skies with rockets and fragile ships. They were not gods. They were not conquerors of galaxies. They were just people trying to survive. So why was Earth remembered with fear? The next day, she returned to the archives with new determination. If there was a secret, she would find it. She cross-checked timelines, looking for unusual events. She studied the oldest alien histories, searching for patterns. She even traced Union Council records, looking for moments when Earth was mentioned but left unexplained. Slowly, a picture began to emerge. 2,000 years ago, before the Union was fully formed, something terrible had spread across the stars. A predator species known only as the Qurayshi swarm. The fragments described them as endless, consuming entire worlds, leaving nothing but silence. Many young civilizations had been destroyed. Others had been enslaved. Even the strongest species had nearly fallen. But then, in the records, the swarm's advance suddenly stopped. Entire fleets vanished. Whole regions of space were freed. The reason was never written clearly. The official history said only the swarm was broken at the silent boundary and Earth was at the center of that boundary. Elena's breath caught. Could it be? Did humans somehow face the swarm? But her ancestors at that time had no starships, no advanced weapons. They barely understood the stars. How could they have fought something the galaxy itself feared? The questions burned in her mind. She saved her findings, but she knew the danger. Samuel's warning echoed in her ears. Even Sarek had refused to tell her more. The Union didn't want this story uncovered, which meant the truth was more important than ever. As she stood alone in the silent archive hall, the holographic map of the galaxy spinning above her, Elena whispered to herself, they drew the galactic map. But they stopped at Earth for a reason, and I'm going to find out why. The stars glimmered back cold and patient as if they already knew the answer. The research station circled Earth in silence, but Elena Carter's mind refused to rest. The mystery she had uncovered pressed against her thoughts like a storm. The maps, the boundary, the whispers of a predator swarm that had once consumed galaxies and stopped at Earth. None of it made sense. She sat in the archives chamber, staring at the floating holographic star map. The stars glowed in shades of gold and blue, and Earth's position blinked faintly at the edge of what the old maps had once dared to chart. Her reflection in the glass surface looked pale and restless. For years, she had believed that humanity was new to the stars, just beginners compared to the ancient civilizations of the Union. But the more she read, the less she believed it. Something in humanity's past had left a shadow so large that alien records refused to speak it aloud. That evening, she decided to push further. An unexpected ally, Elena, contacted Sarek, the Andari diplomat who had once spoken of the silent boundary. He appeared on her holoscreen, his tall form wrapped in a robe of soft silver light. His voice, calm and melodic, filled her small cabin. Elena Carter, he greeted. I had hoped you would rest instead of chasing shadows. I can't, she admitted. You told me Earth is a warning, that the galaxy remembers something it refuses to speak. If you know even part of it, you need to tell me. Sarek's luminous eyes studied her. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, with a sigh, he lowered his head. You are human. Perhaps it is your right to ask. But know this, the Union fears what might be uncovered. Why? She pressed. Because fear is safer than truth. His words only sharpened her curiosity. Sarek hesitated, then leaned closer to his screen. There are fragments. Stories passed among scholars in quiet places. They speak of the Qurayshi swarm, a force without mercy spreading like fire through dry fields. Whole civilizations fell, yet at Earth the swarm ended. Not retreated, not slowed, ended. Elena's chest tightened. And no one knows why? Some know, Sarek said softly, but they do not speak. To mention it is to invite suspicion, even punishment. Many believe Earth carries something dangerous, something the galaxy cannot understand. That is why early explorers marked your system as the last point on their maps. Elena leaned forward. But humans 2,000 years ago couldn't even leave their own planet. They didn't have fleets. They didn't have weapons strong enough to stop a galactic predator. How could they possibly destroy the swarm? Sarek's silver gaze flickered. That is the question that terrifies the Union. Perhaps your people did not act alone. Perhaps Earth hides something ancient beneath its soil. Or perhaps, he paused, perhaps humanity itself is not what it seems. The words struck her like a spark. Humanity, not what it seems. But before she could press further, Sarek ended the call. His last words echoed in her cabin. Ask carefully, Elena Carter. Curiosity can open doors that were closed for a reason. The silence of others. The next day, Elena tried to raise the subject with other researchers. She approached Dr. Samuel Reyes again, but he refused to answer. I warned you. Leave it. His voice was sharp, sharper than she had ever heard before. She spoke to a Threxian historian named Corval, a massive reptilian scholar with scales the color of bronze. At the mention of Earth and the swarm, he immediately shut his data tablet and said, No record exists. You will not ask me again. His yellow eyes glared with something close to fear. Even the gentle Miari, a species known for their endless curiosity, grew nervous when she spoke of the silent boundary. One of them whispered to her when no one else was listening. Child of Earth, the galaxy is built on peace now. Do not drag the shadows of the past into the light. They were buried for our safety. Elena walked away unsettled. It was not ignorance she saw. It was fear. Every alien who heard her questions reacted the same way. With silence, with avoidance, with warnings. Why was Earth a subject so dangerous that no one dared to discuss it? Buried clues. Elena returned to the archives late at night when the hall was empty. She slipped past the standard search filters using codes Sarek had quietly given her. The deeper she went into the Union's records, the more she realized how carefully things had been erased. There were thousands of files about battles with the Karishi swarm in other parts of the galaxy. Names of planets destroyed, fleets consumed. But whenever the swarm's path reached Earth's region, the records broke into silence. Some files were missing entirely, replaced by blank entries marked only with the words, restricted by order of the High Council. Still, small fragments remained. A damaged data log from a scout ship, a half-translated report by an explorer who had vanished. In one fragment, Elena found a chilling line. We approached the blue planet at the edge of the swarm's trail. But when we entered the system, we felt it. The silence. The swarm had been destroyed, yet no weapon remained. No army. Only the humans looking at the stars as though nothing had happened. Elena's hand shook as she copied the fragment. How could ordinary humans be seen as the end of a terror that had consumed the galaxy? A dangerous question word of her research began to spread across the station. Some colleagues avoided her now, whispering when she passed. Others looked at her with pity, as though she had chosen a path that could only end badly. One evening, Samuel Reyes came to her cabin. His face was lined with worry. Elena, he said quietly, I told you not to dig. Do you know what happens to people who ask too many questions about the silent boundary? She looked at him unflinching. What? They disappear. Sometimes their projects are canceled. Sometimes they are reassigned to far colonies where no one hears of them again. Sometimes? Worse. I can't stop now, she said. You've seen the same fragments I've seen. Humanity's history in the galaxy is deeper than anyone admits. Don't you want to know the truth? Samuel's shoulders sagged. Of course I do. But truth can destroy, Elena. And the Union fears humanity because of what you might be. Don't make them fear you more. His words were meant as protection, but they only hardened her resolve. A meeting in the shadows days later, Elena received a secret message. It came through her terminal without origin codes, only a single sentence. If you seek answers, come to the lower docking bay at midnight. Alone. Her pulse raced. It could be a trap. But it could also be the chance she needed. That night, she slipped through the quiet corridors of the station, her footsteps echoing against metal floors. The docking bay was nearly empty, filled only with shadows and the faint hum of machinery. There, waiting in the dim light, was Sarek. You came, he said softly. You sent the message? He nodded. I should not. But you are stubborn, and perhaps it is time someone told you more. The galaxy fears humans because they do not understand you. When the swarm came, every civilization fought with fleets, weapons, strategies. They failed. But Earth, your Earth, did something none of us expected. Something we cannot explain. What did we do? Elena whispered. Sarek's silver eyes reflected the dim lights. That, Elena Carter, is the question the Union does not want answered. Because if you learn the truth, the galaxy will never look at humanity the same way again. His words hung in the air like a blade. Elena felt the weight of them settle in her chest. She did not know the full answer yet. But she knew one thing for certain. The galaxy's silence was not born from ignorance. It was born from fear, and fear always had a reason. The secret had grown too large to ignore. Elena Carter walked the station's halls with the weight of the galaxy pressing on her shoulders. The whispers, the warnings, the fragments of erased history, all of it pointed to a truth buried in silence. And now Sarek had confirmed it. Earth had done something no other world could. But how? Humans of the past had no ships to travel the stars, no weapons to match the swarm, no fleets to fight across galaxies, and yet every record said the same thing. The Karishi swarm had stopped at Earth. It was as if humanity itself had been the answer. That night, Elena sat at her desk with dozens of fragments glowing on her screen. Logs, half-ruined reports, whispers from alien records. One fragment spoke of explorers feeling a silence around Earth. Another suggested the swarm had collapsed as if devoured by itself. None gave a clear answer. Her thoughts circled the same question. What could humans have done? The hidden archive. Sarek reached out again, this time in greater secrecy. He invited Elena into a chamber few humans had ever entered. The Undari Consulate's private library, hidden in the heart of the station. The room was filled with tall crystal shelves glowing with threads of light. Each thread was a memory crystal, holding fragments of history too sensitive for public record. Sarek stood among them, his silver skin glimmering in the soft glow. What you seek may exist here, but if we are caught, I will be exiled. You will lose everything, Elena nodded. I understand, but I need to know. He passed his hand over the shelves and one crystal floated into his grasp. Its light pulsed faintly as if alive. This, he said, is one of the oldest records we have. It was preserved by the Threxians after the swarm vanished. Most who read it refused to speak of it again. Elena accepted the crystal with trembling hands. She placed it into the reader, and the air filled with images. The projection showed a Koreshi hive world, dark and terrible, filled with towers of bone and endless rivers of crawling creatures. A narrator's voice, alien and strained, explained. The swarm advanced without end. But when they reached the human world, their hunger turned inward. They devoured themselves. Entire hives collapsed. Their ships spiraled into their own suns. No outside force struck them. No enemy destroyed them. They ended by their own will, as if commanded by something unseen. Elena shivered. The vision faded, leaving only silence. Do you see? Sarek said quietly. The swarm was not beaten in battle. They simply ceased. And it happened only at Earth, but why? Elena whispered. Sarek's luminous eyes softened. That no one knows. Some believe humans carry a resonance, something in your minds or your presence that the swarm could not endure. Others believe Earth itself hides an ancient guardian. But the most dangerous belief is that it was humanity's own spirit. Your will to survive, your defiance. Perhaps the swarm which fed on weakness found nothing to consume in you. Elena felt her chest tighten. Could it be true? That ordinary humans, without even knowing it, had ended the galaxy's greatest terror simply by existing. Echoes in human history back in her cabin. Elena began comparing these alien records with Earth's own ancient history. She dug through myths, legends, and forgotten texts. Strangely, she found hints. Civilizations thousands of years ago spoke of great plagues, dark visitations, sky demons that vanished without reason. The details were clouded by time, transformed into myth. But they lined up eerily with the same era the swarm was said to collapse. Perhaps humanity had not been as alone as they believed. Perhaps the legends of sky devils and gods of fire were faint echoes of what had really happened. She thought of her ancestors, people who lit fires against the dark, who carved weapons of stone and steel, who stood their ground even when survival seemed impossible. Maybe Sarek was right. Maybe humanity's power was not in technology, but in something deeper. The galaxy measured strength in fleets and weapons, but perhaps the swarm had found in humans something else, an unbreakable refusal to surrender. Resistance in the present news from the frontier reached the station. Whispers spread of colonies attacked by strange remnants, hints of the swarm returning after centuries of silence. Official reports called them isolated dangers, but Elena saw the same fear in every face that had spoken of the silent boundary. The Union's peace was fragile, and the shadow of the past was stirring again. One evening she met Samuel Reyes in the cafeteria. He looked older, more tired than usual. "You've been following the frontier reports," he said. "Yes," Elena answered. "And you think it's the swarm?" "I think," Elena said carefully, "the galaxy may not be finished with what Earth once faced. And if that's true, then humanity's past matters more than ever." Samuel sighed. "You're chasing fire, Elena, but maybe you're right. If the swarm returns, the Union will not stand alone. They'll need Earth. They'll need us." It was the first time he had admitted it. The first time he had spoken of humanity not as weak newcomers, but as something the galaxy might depend on. The forbidden meeting later that week, Sarek arranged a meeting between Elena and members of a quiet circle of scholars, alien historians who secretly studied the silent boundary despite the Union's bans. They met in a shadowed chamber deep within the station, their voices hushed. There were 3 of them: a Threxian with scales like bronze, a Maiari whose translucent skin glowed faintly, and a Caroline with 4 eyes that blinked in careful sequence. "You are human," the Threxian said. "That alone makes this dangerous. But perhaps it also makes it necessary." Elena explained what she had found, the records, the fragments, the strange silence in Earth's history. The scholars exchanged uneasy looks. Finally, the Maiari spoke. "We believe the swarm was connected to thought itself. They did not simply consume matter. They fed on fear, despair, surrender. Civilizations crumbled before them because they lost hope. But humans—" The Maiari's glowing eyes fixed on Elena. "Your kind has always carried hope even in the darkest hours. Perhaps that is what the swarm could not endure." The Caroline nodded slowly. "If the swarm feeds on weakness, then Earth was poison to them. Your people are stubborn, even reckless. That is your danger and your power." Elena's heart pounded. Could it be true? Was the legacy of humanity not in ships or weapons, but in the human spirit itself? The burden of knowledge. When the meeting ended, Elena walked back through the station's long corridors, her thoughts swirling. The galaxy feared humans because they did not understand them. The swarm had ended at Earth, not because of fleets or weapons, but because humanity was something different, something unpredictable. But that truth was dangerous. If the Union admitted it, everything would change. Humanity would no longer be seen as the youngest, weakest species. They would be seen as the ones who broke the swarm, perhaps even as a power to fear. She paused at a window, staring at Earth below. The blue oceans, the swirling clouds, the lands of her ancestors, a world ordinary and extraordinary all at once. Her reflection stared back at her, eyes filled with determination. For centuries, the galaxy had kept Earth's secret hidden. But secrets had a way of awakening, and if the swarm was truly returning, the Union would need that secret more than ever. Elena whispered to herself. The legacy of humanity is not silence. It's survival. A flicker of the future that night as she drifted into uneasy sleep, Elena dreamed. She saw stars burning. She saw alien fleets breaking. She saw humans standing, small yet unyielding, facing something vast and endless. And she felt, deep in her chest, a certainty. The galaxy had not stopped at Earth by accident. It had stopped because Earth was a turning point, a place where history itself had changed. The legacy of humanity was awakening. And soon, the galaxy would remember why it had once drawn its maps to Earth and no further. The calm of the galaxy was shattered by reports that spread like fire. Fleets at the outer edges of Union space were falling under sudden, unexplainable attacks. Colonies reported strange swarms of unknown ships and creatures, moving with speed and precision. At first, the Union dismissed the events as isolated incidents, but when the losses multiplied, panic quietly spread among the Council. Elena Carter watched the news feeds from the International Stellar Research Station with a mixture of dread and determination. She knew deep in her bones what these reports meant. The Karishi swarm had returned. A warning ignored Union leaders met in the Great Council chamber, a massive circular hall with walls of glowing crystal, filled with representatives of thousands of species. The Council's holographic map displayed the locations of the attacks, stretching across multiple sectors. "Reports are consistent," said High Commander Lirak of the Threxian fleet. "Entire colonies lost in hours. Ships disintegrated without a trace. Our forces cannot contain them." Some council members murmured in fear. Others debated strategies. Many glanced nervously at each other as if no plan would succeed. Elena stood at the back of the chamber. She had been allowed to observe, but she knew her presence was unusual. Most species did not trust humans with sensitive discussions about galactic threats. Sarek appeared beside her, silent and tall. His voice was soft. "You see, Elena, the past is repeating itself, and yet the Council still doubts the value of humanity." She nodded. The realization settled like iron. This time, the galaxy might need what humans had once unknowingly given: courage, defiance, and an unpredictable will. Earth's call a message from Earth's Space Defense Command arrived shortly after the Council meeting. The Earth fleet, though small and relatively untested compared to the Union, had detected Karishi probes near the edges of the solar system. Elena read the report aloud to Sarek. Scouts report strange formations. They appear organized yet alien beyond description. Preliminary scans indicate energy signatures similar to historic Karishi activity. We recommend immediate defensive measures. Sarek's silver eyes dimmed. Your world is being tested again. Elena's mind raced. Humanity had once ended the swarm through unknown means. Now it might be called upon to do so again. She contacted Dr. Samuel Reyes. "We can't wait for the Union to act," she said urgently. "We need to prepare Earth's fleets, our scientists, everyone who can help." Samuel hesitated, but then nodded. "It's time. Humanity must step forward." Rising preparations, Earth mobilized with unprecedented speed. Engineers and scientists worked day and night to upgrade existing ships, adapting new technologies learned from Union archives. The best pilots trained together in simulations, developing tactics that relied not on sheer firepower but on ingenuity and flexibility. Elena oversaw much of the planning. She studied the Union records of the swarm's previous attacks, identifying patterns. She proposed strategies that even seasoned alien commanders had overlooked. "This is not just a fight of ships," she said during a briefing. "The swarm feeds on fear and weakness. We need to be unpredictable. We need to refuse to surrender no matter what." Her words struck a chord with the fleet's leaders. Human resilience and creativity became their greatest asset. Meanwhile, Sarek communicated with other Union members on Elena's behalf. Slowly, cautious trust grew. Aliens who had once dismissed humans as weak now watched as Earth's preparations unfolded with speed, precision, and daring. First contact weeks later, human scouts detected the Karishi swarm near the outer planets of the solar system. The sight was terrifying. Ships moved in perfect coordination, their hulls glinting like black shards of crystal. Alien signals indicated no intention to communicate. The swarm simply advanced, relentless and silent. Elena stood on the bridge of the lead human ship, her eyes fixed on the enemy fleet. "Remember," she said quietly to the crew around her, "they feed on weakness. They do not understand humans. We are their test and we will not fail." The first encounter was brutal. Swarm ships struck with lightning speed and the human fleet took losses early. But instead of panicking, the humans adapted. Pilots changed formations mid-flight, engineers rerouted power to shields at the last second, and scientists on board found ways to disrupt the swarm's energy fields. For the first time, the aliens watching from Union fleets realized something extraordinary. Humans were not just surviving. They were shaping the battle through their creativity and will. Unexpected strategies. Elena had studied fragments of the swarm's past behavior, and she began to see a pattern. The swarm attacked predictably, but only when it expected fear or surrender. She instructed the fleet to act in ways that seemed reckless but were calculated to confuse the enemy. Small strike teams darted into the swarm's formations, then disappeared, leaving the larger fleet to attack from unexpected angles. Engineers overloaded decoy drones to mimic larger fleets, drawing the swarm into traps. Every action, no matter how minor, demonstrated a refusal to submit. Observers from the Union watched in awe. Humans are unpredictable, one Caroline commander said. They do not follow logic as we know it, and the swarm cannot adapt. The pattern of victory began to emerge. Human ingenuity combined with their unyielding spirit began to turn the tide. Ships that had seemed doomed moments before survived and fought back. Colonies that might have been lost held firm. The turning point days into the conflict, the swarm encountered a human fleet near the outer asteroid belt. This time, the engagement escalated to full-scale battle. Thousands of ships, both human and alien, faced the seemingly endless swarm. Elena coordinated every move, relying not on brute force but on adaptability. She realized that the swarm was connected to fear and hesitation. Where humans acted decisively and without doubt, their ships were almost impossible to destroy. One pilot, Commander Lena Harrow, performed a daring maneuver, using gravitational pull from a nearby asteroid to redirect the swarm's ships into their own energy fields. Another team released a wave of decoy signals, drawing the swarm away from a vulnerable colony. Every action demonstrated the same principle. The swarm could not endure humans who refused to fear. Sarek watched silently, whispering, "It is happening again. Humanity's legacy is awakening." Union recognition. The Union fleets, initially skeptical of human leadership, began to follow their example. Alien commanders who had dismissed humanity as inexperienced started copying their strategies. Humans had taught the galaxy an old lesson. Victory was not always in numbers or power, but in courage, creativity, and unity. Elena realized that humanity had become more than a participant. They were the spark that rekindled hope in the galaxy. Fleets that had been paralyzed by fear moved with renewed strength. Inspired by the human example, messages from the Council arrived, praising the humans. "Your species demonstrates qualities the galaxy has long forgotten. Your spirit gives us strength. Continue your leadership." Elena felt a surge of pride, not just for herself, but for the countless humans who had trained, fought, and refused to surrender. A glimpse of the past late one night, Elena examined a recovered fragment from the swarm's previous collapse at Earth centuries ago. The patterns were similar to the current battle. The swarm had once faced humans and failed, not because of fleets or weapons, but because of a force they could not understand. She understood now why the Union had once stopped its maps at Earth. Humanity had always been underestimated. But fear had kept the galaxy from acknowledging the truth. As she looked out at the stars, Elena whispered to herself, "The galaxy feared us once, and now it will remember us for what we truly are." The fleet held position, waiting for the next engagement. But in the hearts of humans and the aliens who had followed their lead, there was no fear, only determination. The swarm had returned, yes, but humanity had returned stronger than ever. Their spirit, their ingenuity, and their refusal to surrender had become the greatest weapon in the galaxy. And as the battle lines prepared to clash again, Elena knew that this was only the beginning. Humanity had passed the test once more, and the galaxy would never forget. The galaxy had changed. What had begun as whispers of fear and mystery had grown into a reality that no civilization could ignore. The Karishi swarm, a predator that had once destroyed countless worlds, had returned. Yet in the face of their shadow, humanity had risen, not with overwhelming power but with unyielding will, creativity, and courage. Elena Carter watched the aftermath from the bridge of the lead human ship. The remnants of the swarm drifted like broken shards through space, their ship silent and motionless. For weeks, humans and Union fleets had fought together, turning what seemed like certain defeat into a historic victory. The galaxy had finally seen the truth. A changed Union, in the Great Hall of the Galactic Union. Representatives gathered in an unusual session. The Council had called a meeting to honor humanity and to reconsider the silent boundary that had been kept around Earth for centuries. Elena stood quietly in the back, observing the proceedings. Sarek, her steadfast ally, stood beside her, his silver skin shimmering in the soft light. The council members' eyes, once wary and cautious when humans entered the chamber, now held respect. Some even showed awe. High Commander Lirak, a Threxian whose fleets had once doubted humanity, spoke first. "The Karishi swarm has returned and has been defeated not by numbers alone, but by courage and strategy. Humans have shown qualities that no other species demonstrates in the same way. Today we honor them. The chamber erupted in quiet murmurs and gestures of acknowledgement. Aliens who had once dismissed Earth's inhabitants as inexperienced now recognized something extraordinary. Elena felt her chest swell with pride. Not for herself, but for the billions of humans whose determination had changed the course of the galaxy. Recognition of the legacy, after the formal honors, the Council turned to a matter that had long been avoided, the galactic map. For centuries, the charts had stopped at Earth. No lines extended further. No star systems beyond humanity's homeworld were marked for exploration. The reason had been simple: fear. The galaxy had remembered Earth as a place the Karishi swarm could not destroy, and it had kept its distance. Now, that fear had turned into respect. The maps, Lyrak said, addressing the chamber, will no longer stop at Earth. We will chart the stars beyond, and humanity will guide our knowledge of them. Your species' actions have proven that courage and determination are forces the galaxy cannot ignore. Elena watched as a holographic projection unfolded. A new sector appeared beyond Earth, marked with golden lines and bright points of light. Each point was a star system waiting to be explored, studied, and inhabited. At the center of this new chart was Earth, a symbol not of fear but of hope and resilience. Sarek placed a hand on her shoulder. "The galaxy remembers now," he said softly. "Not as it feared, but as it should have all along." Humans among the stars, the changes were immediate. Human fleets, once small and hesitant, were now fully integrated into Union operations. Scientists shared knowledge freely with alien researchers, engineers collaborated on advanced starship designs, and pilots trained alongside species that had once considered them weak. Elena helped coordinate new missions, designing strategies based not only on technology, but on the human ability to adapt. The Union quickly learned that humans had a unique way of thinking, creative, daring, and unpredictable. In many ways, they were the perfect allies in a galaxy full of danger. Colonies that had once doubted humanity now welcomed their presence. Trade routes were reopened with human participation, and every map updated after the battle carried the new designation, human space. For the first time, Earth was no longer at the edge of silence. It was at the center of possibility. The spirit of humanity Elena often reflected on what had truly made humans so different. It was not their weapons. It was not their fleets. It was something deeper. In the long corridors of history, humans had always faced challenges greater than themselves. On Earth, they had survived plagues, natural disasters, and wars. They had explored deserts, oceans, and mountains, always pushing further than their predecessors. That same spirit, the refusal to surrender, the ability to hope when all seemed lost, was now recognized by the galaxy. Sarek once told her, "The galaxy feared humanity because it could not predict you. And when something cannot be predicted, it cannot be controlled. That is your strength." Elena understood then that the swarm had been defeated not merely by human tactics but by human spirit. That same spirit would guide the future and perhaps the galaxy itself. A new era. Begins weeks turned into months and the galaxy slowly returned to peace. The swarm had been destroyed or driven back to regions unknown, and new fleets patrolled the frontier. The Union Council worked tirelessly to integrate humanity fully. Earth scientists contributed to understanding alien technologies. Human diplomats mediated disputes between long-feuding species. Explorers from Earth charted new star systems, naming planets and moons. For the first time, humanity was not a newcomer. They were leaders, innovators, and partners in shaping the future of the galaxy. Elena traveled to distant colonies, observing humans and aliens working side by side. She saw young human cadets learning from alien instructors, engineers collaborating across species, and children on colony worlds looking up at the stars with dreams as big as she had once had. Everywhere she went, the legacy of Earth's spirit shone brightly. A personal triumph one evening, Elena returned to the research station. She stood at the observation deck looking down at Earth, a small blue gem shining in the void. She thought of the long journey that had brought her here, the maps that had ended at Earth, the whispers of fear, the secrets that the galaxy had buried. She thought of the Karishi swarm, the battles fought, and the courage displayed by humans everywhere. For centuries, the galaxy had underestimated Earth. For centuries, It had been afraid of what it did not understand. And now at last humanity was recognized for what it truly was: resilient, inventive, and unbreakable. Sarek appeared beside her, silent as always. "You changed everything," he said softly. "No," Elena replied, smiling. "Humans changed everything. I only helped tell the story." The stars stretched endlessly before them, bright and full of promise. The map redrawn. Finally, the moment Elena had longed for arrived. The new galactic map was unveiled to the public for the first time. Unlike the old maps, which had stopped at Earth, this map extended far beyond, charting hundreds of new systems. Star clusters that had been unexplored were now open to study and settlement. Trade routes were marked. Strategic positions were noted. And at the center of it all, Earth shone as a beacon, the starting point for the new era. The message was clear. The galaxy would no longer ignore humanity. It would no longer fear them. Instead, it would recognize and respect them. Elena stood before the projection, watching the golden lines spread outward. She felt the weight of history. The burden of fear finally lifted. Humanity had not only survived, they had shaped the course of the stars. A lasting legacy. As the council adjourned, Elena walked through the station one last time, reflecting on the journey. The galaxy had tested humanity, and humanity had responded, not with recklessness but with ingenuity and courage. The maps had been redrawn, the stories told, and the silent boundary erased. She thought of the generations to come, the explorers who would travel beyond Earth, the humans and aliens who would work together to build a brighter future. Humanity's legacy was no longer hidden. It was alive, present in every star system, every colony, every fleet. And somewhere in the quiet of the observation deck, Elena whispered to herself, "They drew the galactic map. And this time, they will not stop at Earth. Humanity will lead the way." The stars above shone in answer, bright and endless, a promise that the galaxy had finally understood the strength and spirit of humanity.